Hello and welcome to the second video in the series, Cisco UCCE 12.X Build Your Own Lab. In this video I'm going to be working on the configuration of the Cisco 2921 router. Now the first thing that you need to do is to connect the USB cable from the router to your administration PC. Now you want to connect the RJ45 end to the port marked console on the back of the router and connect the other end to your USB port on your machine. Once you do that, you need to determine which console port it's showing on your PC. So to do that, we're going to go into search and we're going to type in device manager and we're going to select that. We're then going to go down to ports, COM and LPT and look for something that says USB serial port. So in this case it's showing up as COM3. So we're going to connect COM3 on PuTTY and then we're going to power on the router. So let me open up PuTTY. We're going to connect serial. I'm going to change this to COM3 and we're going to select 9600 as the baud rate. I'm going to click on open. I'm going to go ahead and maximize and then I'm going to turn on the router. Now it's going to take a few minutes for it to start showing anything on the screen. So there we have the start of the boot up process. This will take it several minutes. Now don't worry if you don't understand some of the things that I'm going to be typing in. At a later date, in a later video, I'm going to go into more depth into what some of the commands are and what they do. Okay, so now we're at the first prompt. Would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? In this case we're going to select no, because we're going to manually configure. Okay, we're going to hit enter and we get the base router prompt. Now you can't do very much in this basic user mode, so what we need to do is go into basically the super user mode, and in order to do that we type in the command enable. Now you will see the prompt change to end with a pound sign. This is the super user mode. Now we're going to go into configuration mode, and in order to do that we type in conf t. Now you see the prompt change to config. Now we're going to start typing in some of the initial configuration commands. This first command basically tells the router to encrypt any plain text passwords that may be in the configuration file. Next we're going to set the host name of the server or the router, which is going to be lab rtr01. The next command is for authentication. Now we're going to put in the domain name that we're going to have for all the systems in this network. In this case it's going to be myhomelabs.us. Now for you can put in whatever you want, but whenever we set up the domain controllers we'll want to use the same domain name. Now we're going to put in the IP addresses of the two domain controllers that we're going to build. And these domain controllers are going to also be the NTP servers as well, which keeps all the times consistent throughout all the machines. So we're going to set these up. And we're going to disable HTTP server. Because we're going to do any configurations via command line. Now we're going to put in default gateway, which is going to be the IP address of your ISP router. The next thing we're going to do is going to create an administration user. We'll just call this admin. We're going to set the privilege level to 15, which is the super user privilege level. We're then going to put in what we're going to use is the password to log in with that user. Now we're going to generate an RSA key, which is going to be used for SSH logins to the router. As you see, it's popped up saying SSH has been enabled. Now we're going to do some configurations for the console line and the remote access lines, which are called VTYs. We're going to set timeouts for each so that there will be automatic logouts. This next command basically tells it if it's got any updates or commands, responses, to wait until you have finished typing your current command before displaying those. Otherwise, you could be in the middle of typing a command and it pops something up, making it difficult to read what you're typing. We're going to set the login to local. That means it uses a local database for login credentials. And we're going to now exit the line configuration and move to the VTYs. And repeat the same. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up NAT for the outgoing traffic. This is so that the ISP router will be able to send the traffic out to the internet and return the traffic. Now that last command is what actually carries out the NAT. And we're going to do end. And then we're going to write these configurations to NVRAM. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to enable the cube functionality, which is used for the voice communications. Now you may or may not have these functions depending on which router you get. If you get the 2921K9, then this functionality should exist. So we're again going to go into configuration mode. We're going to tell it to accept the end user license agreements. I'm going to say yes. Type in end and then activate some of the licenses. I may have already done this in this router before, but I want to make sure. I want to go through each of these. into configuration mode. Enable these last two options. I'm then going to end, and I'm going to do a write mem to save the configurations to NVRAM, and then we're going to do a reload, which reboots the server and activates the features that we've now enabled. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to pause the video until the router is rebooted. Now the server has come back up. I'm going to hit return. Now you see it's asking for a username. This will be the admin user that we created earlier. And the password. Now you'll see we're actually in the super user prompt. Now to see if our changes were made, I'm going to do a show version. I'm going to hit space. Hit space. Now you can see the suites are right to use. And they're activated. Now we're going to work on the actual interfaces and the IP addresses assigned to them. So we're going to move into configuration mode, and we're going to start with the main interface, which is gigabit 0/0. Going to tell it to no shut, which means bring it up, and we're not going to assign it an IP address. Now all of these other IP addresses that we're going to assign, they are going to be assigned to virtual interfaces, and each virtual interface is going to be assigned its own VLAN. So I'm going to start with gigabit 0/0.666. I'm going to give it a description. We're going to tell it that it's going to use .1q VLAN tagging, and this one is going to be on VLAN 666. Now we're going to assign it an IP address. And give it the subnet mask. And we're going to enable NAT on the interface. Now we're going to run through some of the other interfaces. 0/0.100 is going to be our management interface. It's going to be on VLAN 100. Well, in this case I'm going to make it 101 because I've already got a 100 on my network. The IP address is 10.100.0.1. Now we're going to move on to the next interface, which is going to be number 10. This one is going to be where most of the servers will reside and will be known as the UCCE public network. It's going to be VLAN number 10. The next one we're going to create is going to be interface 00.20. That's going to be where the UCCE private network is. And it's going to have an IP address of 10.120.1. The next one is going to be 00.30, which is where the IP phones are going to reside. We're going to add a few more options to this interface because we're going to be using DHCP, and to help the devices find out what IP address they're going to get, we need to add a command called IP helper address. And this is going to be the server it contacts in order to get its DHCP addresses. And again, those are going to be the domain controllers. The next network is .40. This is where we can put client PCs. That's going to be VLAN 40 with IP address 10.140.1. Again, we're going to use IP helper address. And the final network is going to be .50. This is where we're going to put the asterisk server, which is going to simulate outside phones calling the UCCE environment. So we have VLAN 50. And we're going to put IP helper on that as well. And then we're going to end that part. I'm going to write the configuration to NVRAM. Now I'm going to run this command, show IP interface brief, which should show us the network interfaces and the IP addresses assigned to them. Now don't worry at the moment, because you see status is down and protocols down. That's because the network interface is not plugged into a switch. But that will be changing once we get everything connected together. In this last section, we're going to be configuring what's called the dial peers. These are used by the router to both allow calls and to direct calls to the correct devices based on the dialed number or the incoming called from number. I'm going to go into more detail in a later video about these. We're just going to go ahead and configure them. So again, we need to go into configuration mode, and we're going to start with voice classes. And this is configuring the voice class as SIP, and we're going to be telling it the IP address of the devices. Now these IP addresses point to the three important devices in the network. The first device is the asterisk server, which is the external calling in PBX. This is the machine that will be simulating inbound calls. The second machine, which is the 10.41, that is the CVP server. And this last one is the call manager server. We're now going to actually configure the actual dial peers themselves. Put the description in. I'm going to tell it to use SIP v2. I'm going to say to use UDP. And we're going to tell it the numbers that are coming in that start with 3 and are 4 digits long will be processed by this rule. And we're going to tell it that the voice protocol is going to be G711 ULAW. Now we'll move on to the next dial peer. Okay, I'm going to say if the destination pattern starts with 10, then use this rule. Now this rule is going to be used for directing traffic to the CVP server for extensions that start with 31XX. This is where we're going to build the IVR applications. And this rule is to direct traffic to the CUCM or call manager server for numbers that start with 30XX. This will be the agent extensions. So now that's all the dial pair set up. So we have communications rules for both incoming and outgoing calls to and from each of the three major devices: the asterisk PBX, the call manager, and also CVP. Now we have two more things to add. And that tells the server to register the SIP connections between the router and the asterisk box, and the router and the call manager box. And we're going to do right ma'am. And that completes the configuration of the 2921 router. And if we just do a show run, we can see the full configuration. Okay, and that's it for now. Thank you for watching the video. Please remember to subscribe to get updates on upcoming videos, and also like the video as well. Thanks a lot. See you in the next video.